Chapter 14. A Ghost and a Mirror. Terror Castle loomed in the darkness above Jupiter and Pete. There was no moon, just a few stars to relieve the ebony blackness of the canyon. "It won't get any darker," Jupiter said, his voice hushed. "We might as well go in." Pete carried the new, extra-powerful torch he had bought out of his allowance. His old one was still there, up in the library. They walked up the broken steps and across the tiled terrace. Jupiter limped slightly, favouring his tightly taped ankle. Their footsteps seemed very loud in the darkness. Somewhere a small animal was frightened out of its hiding place and went streaking away from the beams of their torches. "Whatever that is, it's a smart whatever that is," Pete said. "It's getting out of here." Jupiter did not answer. He had his hand on the front door and was tugging. It wouldn't budge. "Lend a hand," Jupiter said. "The door's stuck." Pete grabbed the big brass handle too. Suddenly something gave. The brass handle came off in their grasp. Together they tumbled backwards and fell in a heap on the tiles. "Oof," Pete gasped. "You're lying on my stomach. I can't move, I can't breathe. Get off, quick!" Jupiter rolled over and got to his feet. Pete stood up, testing himself for broken bones or dislocations. "I guess I'm still all here," he said, "except my good sense. I left that at home." His partner was examining the brass door handle under his torch. "Look," he said, "the screw that holds the knob to the rod that goes through the lock came loose." "Been a lot of traffic through here the last couple of weeks," Pete muttered. "Maybe it just wore out." His stocky partner's face was set in a thoughtful scowl. "I wonder if it could have been loosened." "Who'd do a thing like that?" Pete asked. "Anyway, we can't get in, so we might as well go back." "I feel sure we can effect an entrance elsewhere," Jupiter said. "Suppose we try one of those French windows down there." He moved along the front wall of the building. Half a dozen tall French windows faced directly onto the terrace. The first 5 were securely locked, but the 6th was open half an inch. Jupiter pulled. It opened easily like a door. Behind it was impenetrable darkness. The darkness, however, was partially dispelled by Jupiter's torch. He pointed the beam in through the open window, showing a long table with chairs placed in it. At the far end of the table, there were apparently dishes. "The dining room," Jupiter said in a low voice. "We can enter here." Inside, the beams from their torches roamed the room, showing fine carved chairs, a long mahogany table, an elaborate sideboard and carved wooden panelling on the walls. "There seem to be several doors," Jupiter remarked. "I wonder which we should take." "As far as I'm concerned—" "Oh!" Pete let out a strangled exclamation as he half turned and saw a woman in long flowing robes looking at them. She wore clothes such as Pete had seen in pictures painted 300 years before, and tied around her neck was a rope. The unattached end of the rope fell down across her robe to her feet. She had her hands tucked into her flowing sleeves and was looking at the boys with an expression of sorrow. Pete reached out and tugged at Jupe's jacket. "What is it?" Jupiter asked. Look," Pete stuttered. "We aren't alone. We have company." Jupiter turned and Pete felt him stiffen. That meant he saw her too, the woman who was watching them, not moving, not breathing, just standing there watching. Pete guessed he knew who she was all right. She was the ghost of the woman Mr. Rex had told them about, the one who had hanged herself to avoid marrying some man her father wanted her to. For a moment, the boys remained frozen. The ghostly apparition neither moved nor spoke. "Shine your light that way," Jupiter whispered. "When I say now. Now!" Together they turned their torches towards the standing woman. She vanished as silently as she had appeared. There was nothing there now but a mirror, which reflected the light back into their eyes. "A mirror!" Pete burst out. Then she must have been behind us. He whirled around, zigzagging his light back and forth. But there was no one there except for themselves. "She's gone," Pete said. "And I'm going too. That was a ghost." "Wait!" His stocky partner gripped his wrist. "Apparently we saw a ghostly reflection in a mirror, but we may have been mistaken. I'm sorry we acted so hastily. We should have taken more time to examine the unusual phenomenon." "More time?" Pete yelled. "All right, why didn't you photograph her? You're carrying the camera." "So I am." Jupiter sounded chagrined. "And I forgot all about using it. It wouldn't have shown anything anyway. You can't photograph a ghost." "Likewise, a ghost can't reflect in a mirror," Jupe told him. "But either this one did, or else she was inside the mirror itself. I never heard of a mirror ghost. I wish she'd show herself again." "That's your opinion, not mine," Pete retorted. "All right, we've proved Terra Castle is haunted. Now let's go and tell Mr. Hitchcock." "We have just begun," Jupiter said. "There is much to be learned yet. We must proceed farther. This time I won't forget the camera. I am very anxious to photograph the blue phantom playing the ruined pipe organ." His partner's calmness helped to steady Pete. He shrugged. "All right," he said. "But aren't you going to mark our route with the chalk?" Jupiter gave another exclamation of annoyance. "You're quite right," he said. "I shall repair the omission at once." He stepped to the window by which they had entered and chalked a large question mark on it. Then he chalked a similar mark lightly on the dining room table, being careful not to mark the surface. After that, he stepped to the big mirror on the wall to put the three investigators' special mark on it, so that if Worthington and Bob should come after us, they will have our attention drawn to it, he told Pete, as he pressed hard to make the chalk show on the polished glass. "In case we're never seen again, you mean?" Pete asked. Jupiter did not answer. Under the pressure of his hand, the tall mirror had swung slightly back, like a door. Beyond it lay a dark passageway, leading deep into Terra Castle.